the news that we have to start with, I don't know. I did not. I don't have the energy, I'll be honest with you, to relive the Michael Brown case. However, there's new footage that came out, which requires that we absolutely discuss Michael Brown. There is a video, there's a documentary coming out called Stranger Fruit. And in that video, it shows Michael Brown making an exchange earlier that morning, before the video that was released to the public during this time of escalated tension in America. The video that was released, honestly, was released as propaganda. And I knew it at the time, but we did not know to the extent to which this was propaganda. Now you're going to say, well, Ben, did he strong arm? Blah, blah, blah. And, well, hopefully my audience, you're smart enough not to say that. Well, actually, yeah, it does mean, if you're looking at the second video that was released outside of the context of the new video that has been released, you would make the assumption, as most of America did, that Michael Brown committed strong armed robbery to steal some quote unquote cigarillos. But the video that was not released, that happened at 1 o'clock in the morning before before he was killed, shows that those were his cigarillos. It shows that he had a relationship with this convenience store. It shows that he made an exchange with them. He gave them something in exchange for the cigarillos. Well, Ben, what was it? I don't know. They were smelling it, so chances are it was weed. It probably was some good weed from the looks of how they were sniffing it, and they made the exchange. But that's besides the point. Whether or not he was selling weed or exchanging weed, bartering weed, he had a relationship with that convenience store, and he went back to reclaim his property. But what was sold to America, and I'll play the footage, I'm sure everyone has seen it, and I'll play the footage, but what it showed, what they gave to America, was just enough information for people to conclude that Michael Brown was dangerous. And in the same, this is not new footage that was discovered by the police 2 years later. This was new footage that was in the possession of the police and the prosecutors at the time of the original investigation. At the time that they released video B, they had in their possession video A. Video A established that Michael Brown had a relationship with this convenience store, that he went back to get his property, and they did not bother to release that because they needed to stop this national onslaught that was happening to Ferguson. Because, let me set the stage, go back 2 years later. I never will forget watching Fox News on purpose that week, that they themselves had to fall on the side of the protesters and the media, not because they believed in what they were protesting for, but because how much of a draconian crackdown of the hyper-militarized police, of Ferguson Police Department, the draconian crackdown on protesters and the media. It was so bad that even Fox News, Fox and Friends in the damn morning, fell on the side of the people who were protesting because of how obscene the crackdown was. And this was all within the first week of Michael Brown being killed. It escalated, and the peak and the climax of this conversation happened on a Friday when the Ferguson Police Department released the footage. They released this footage of tape B. Tape B gives you the impression that Michael Brown committed strong armed robbery. It doesn't matter that even if he had committed strong armed robbery, that had nothing to do with his encounter with Darren Wilson, because Darren Wilson, when he rolled up on Michael Brown, opened up his door and told them, before he opened up the door, he rolled up next to them and told them to get the F out of the street, right? At that time, Darren Wilson did not know anything about the alleged strong-armed robbery. And this is the frame. This is what they set up for America for the last 2 years, to indict Michael Brown's character such that it exonerates Darren Wilson's character, the lying son of a bitch, Darren Wilson, the one who said he had a blown orbital socket. And when you saw the pictures of his orbital socket, it looked like he had hives, not a blown orbital socket. A blown orbital socket, think about Rocky, the movie, when his eye is about to fall the hell out of his face. You see the pictures of Darren Wilson, who claimed he had a blown orbital socket, and all he looked like is like he was in the sun too long. So this is all the effort of Ferguson over the last 2 years, and at the time, to gain control of the narrative in the nation, such that this crackdown, this onslaught of unified voices against their crackdown. I mean, unified voices from conservatives, from Fox News. Everyone 100% disagreed with how Ferguson was cracking down on the protesters and on the media. And they had to do something about it. So what did they do? That Friday morning, they released video A, video B. And video B is the one we are all familiar with. Video B made it easy, and it gave an escape route for the conservatives and everyone to finally have something in this story that seems atrocious. We have something to hold on to. Michael Brown was a thug who strong-armed, who robbed the store convenience clerk and strong-armed him. And subsequently, even though it has nothing to do with the encounter with Darren Wilson, it gives them enough to say, oh, he was a thug and he deserved it. Well, 2.5 years later, here we are with video A that shows, no, Michael Brown did not strong arm these people. He actually went back to get his possessions, and he had a long-standing relationship with this convenience store such that he trusted them enough to leave his package of cigarillos behind the counter for almost 12 hours. That's the backdrop of this video. Now, the clip I'm getting ready to play is literally a clip from Stranger Fruit. It's about Michael Brown. It's a documentary that's coming out, and the narration puts it very succinctly. Let's listen in.
One night, when reading through the St. Louis County investigation papers, I stumbled along something that was absolutely stunning. At approximately 1:13 a.m., August 9th, a male arrived as a backseat passenger in a dark-colored passenger vehicle. Brown enters and exits the front doors. Michael was at the market at 1:13 a.m. the night before he died? Camera 7. The male proceeds to the beverage cooler, selected unknown items, and proceeded to the register. The male remains at the counter and eventually leaves the area of the registers with no merchandise. I couldn't believe what I had read. Michael was in the store the night before he died, and St. Louis County saw the videotape, and they didn't tell us. Well, guess what, St. Louis County? I've got the videotape.
He's a little dramatic, but
that 2 years later, there was a video. What you're going to see on this video is what they didn't show us happen. That clarifies that there was an understanding, and that's what you're going to see in that video.
In the early hours of August 9th, just 11 hours before Mike took his last steps, he went to his local convenience store to make an exchange. Look carefully at the counter, and you can see a trade is made. Mike gives the store a little bag, smelling it and passing it around.
There was some type of exchange for one thing for another. That these people know each other well enough that this is the relationship that they have.
Keyword right there.
You can clearly see Mike being given 2 big boxes of cigarillos. The store clerk puts the cigarillos into a bag for Mike with his other stuff and hands it over the counter. Mike is about to leave the store, but decides to have the clerk hold his things behind the counter for him. The next day, with his hands politely behind his back, Mike goes back into the store to get his stuff.
It was a misunderstanding.
St. Louis County has written documentation that we found which shows they saw the 1:13 a.m. videotape, but they leave out what really happened that night in their report. Mike traded the store a little bag of weed and got 2 boxes of cigarillos in return. He left his items at the store and he went back the next day to pick them up. Mike did not rob the store.
There you go. I mean, how critical is that information? See, here's the thing. In actuality, if we discuss the context of Michael Brown being killed, what happened in the convenience store actually has no bearing on it. Not at 1 a.m. in the morning, nor later on the afternoon, where it appears that he committed strong arm robbery. Neither one of those have a direct bearing on the incident with Darren Wilson, because Darren Wilson was not aware of either incident. Darren Wilson approached two black kids walking in the middle of the street, rolled up on them and told them to get the F out of the street, provoking the situation. Then he pulls off, turns around when the guys don't get out of the middle of the street, and everything else escalates from that to the murder of Michael Brown. So what happened in the convenience store at 1 a.m. and the next day has nothing to do with that, because Darren Wilson didn't know about that. But what they did was inserted video B, the one that everyone is familiar of. They inserted video B into the national conversation just enough to obfuscate, and not just obfuscate, but also to give red meat, to divide America along racial and political and ideological lines, because America, up until that Friday, was unified against the city of Ferguson, not because Michael Brown being killed. Nobody knew much about the situation, but what we did know was that Ferguson was hyper militarized. They were out there cracking down on protesters and the media, arresting people from the media, tear gassing media, to the point where they had to leave their cameras. They had to break down and run, not even break down. They had to run and leave their cameras so they would not be attacked by the tear gas. And when America saw that, everybody from Ben Dixon to Fox News agreed that the city of Ferguson had lost their damn minds. And you cannot have a unified United States of America up against this situation. So they've hired a fixer. They hired the antithesis of Olivia, whatever her name is, from that show. I can't even think of the name. They hired a PR consultant who came in and assisted them with this so that they could get what they needed to help Darren Wilson and to get the monkey off the back of the city of Ferguson. And what do you need? You need a divisive conversation where Republicans and conservatives fall on this side, and, conservative Democrats also fall on that side. And everyone's like, oh, he was a thug. He was a thug. And so obviously Darren Wilson was this heroic police officer, trying to survive in the midst of this Goliath thug. And then on the other side, you have everyone else who's saying this is not right. That's how they pulled it off. And for 2 years, this city held on to this information, not to mention everything else that happened with the district attorney, putting somebody on the grand jury who already had some preconceived biases, somebody that they basically knew would say whatever they wanted to say. All of that escalating to the point of Darren Wilson getting off. I don't know if I have any energy to anything. I mean, there's nothing else that needs to be said about this. This is what we're up against. This is the type of machine that we're up against, because even with a freedom of information request, it took 2 years for this guy to get this video. 2 years. Long enough for Darren Wilson to be making $1 million speaking, and to make $1 million off of a GoFundMe, and I'm sorry, $1 million off of a GoFundMe, and $600,000 doing an interview on ABC. Long enough for him to be gone. Long enough for people to no longer be angry to go back and relitigate this situation. Long enough for people to be exasperated like I am, not really having the energy to relive this incident, because you saw the injustice as it occurred real time. Because video B, the one that they released, had absolutely nothing to do with Darren Wilson's murder of Michael Brown. Nothing. Because he was not even aware of what happened in video B. But if you insert video B and you insert that into the national conversation without the context of video A, you divide America and give these racist bastards what they need to no longer side with Americans who see this gross crackdown by hyper-militarized police from the city of Ferguson. Everybody, you give them the red meat that they need to be like, oh, whew, We don't have to be on the side of justice because Michael Brown was a thug. We don't have to be on the side of the protesters who are getting abused because Michael Brown was a thug. We don't have to be on the side of the media who were being arrested because Michael Brown was a thug.